Hello friends, welcome back. Hope you're well. If you saw my last video, which is right there, I was editing a photo from Madeira. I just returned recently from the Luminar adventure in Madeira. And one of the things that we do on these trips is, in addition to going out and taking epic photos of gorgeous locations, is we do editing tutorials, and more specifically, I do editing tutorials where we're sitting in a room with everybody and people bring their laptops and we edit, or I just present in front of a group and show tips and tricks. Anyway, today's video is all about that because we were sitting in a room, and if you've been here before, you know I kind of have a, I'm going to call it a method to my madness. I have a way I like to edit. I like to control the light. I like to start with develop raw and then super contrast, and I kind of focus on light and detail and color, and I kind of, it's almost boring in some regard, but like I follow a similar kind of method because it works really well for me, and that's kind of what I profess. It may or may not work for you, and that's okay, but I generally find that it works quite well. But in one of those sessions, I had this photo, and one of the guests said, hey, would D. Hayes work on a photo like this? And I was like, yeah, I mean, sure, it's cloudy, it wasn't hazy, but sure, it would work. And so I went down to the landscape category, which is right here, and I went to D. Hayes. And I just dragged it and I said, well, that's too much. But if you look at it, the before and after, it does a pretty interesting thing to the photo. It creates a little bit more drama, creates a little bit more oomph. And I was like, that looks pretty cool. It also kind of pops the colors a little bit. So I was like, well, speaking of color, there's golden hour right here. I love that warmth coming through. It's kind of blue around the edges and the sun's breaking through right in the center. Why don't we give it some golden hour? And again, maybe a little too much, but I kind of liked it. And, you know, I sit here all the time and I talk about, hey, you should experiment and you should do things. But in fairness, I'm a creature of habit. I never do this kind of stuff. I always go develop raw. I'm almost always go super contrast. And I started on D. Hayes. This was a raw file. I had done nothing to it other than crop and straighten before making this video. But I did D. Hayes and golden hour to 100, and I was like, that looks pretty good. It just needs, you know what I need to do? I need to bump up the light a little bit. So I went to Accent AI and I was like, why don't I do like a 50 on that? And I got there and I was thinking, this photo's looking pretty good, I think. You know what it needs though is a little bit of work in the color. So I'll go to color harmony and specifically color balance, one of my favorite parts of color harmony. In fact, my favorite probably color tool anywhere. And so, you know, I did a little bit with the highlights, and then I went into midtones and I did a little bit there. And then I went into shadows, and, you know, let's see, I'm going to do about a 5 here. And then I went into shadows and I did a little bit in the blue. If I could click shadows, there you go. A little bit in the blue. That always darkens it a little bit, but it gives it a little bit of oomph. And I was really liking this photo. It's fairly dramatic and it's kind of awesome looking, I think. I'm a little biased, of course, because I took it and I was standing there. But I thought it's a little bit dark. Maybe just get a little bit of bump up in the shadows. You know, maybe I'll go pretty high on that to give you a little bit better visibility. Then I'm going to close develop raw. Then I'm going to open it again. I'm going to get a mask. I'm going to do this radial gradient trick that I like to do in sunsets. When the sun's kind of blown out like that, I like to kind of come in here and just kind of lean into that blowout, if you will. And so that's a little bit higher exposure, a bit more contrast, and maybe even a little bit more exposure. And if you look at the before and after in that center section, before and after, I'm just kind of leaning into that glow that comes from kind of a blown out overall look. And then I went to structure and I was like, hey, you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to go for a little more painterly look. So maybe I'll just go a little bit negative structure. And you know what I might do is just wrap this up with a vignette and do something about like that, maybe a little bit rounder. I'm a big fan of feathering, so I'll just go to 100, make that a bit rounder. Subject defaults right to the middle, great with me, before and after. The only other thing I really need to do is just use the eraser on that little crane and those little birds. But you notice this is something that I just completely ignored all the advice that I give here on YouTube pretty much every week, which is, hey, develop raw. Hey, super contrast, go in that order. And that order works, trust me. And I'm not really going to deviate from that, but I'm also a huge fan of experimentation, and I will fall on the sword here and admit that in a lot of my videos, I don't feel like I experiment enough. And I experimented simply because one of our guests said, hey, what do you think about D. Hayes on a photo like that? And I had done nothing to the photo. And of course, I went into D. Hayes. I did the things that I just shared here. And I believe I said while I was sitting there, well, I would normally do develop raw and then super contrast to balance the light. But I ended up getting a result that I honestly pretty much like quite a bit. So if you look at the before and after, I mean, we've got a pretty intense, beautiful, dramatic sunrise here. The colors look great. I mean, honestly, it all looks great. I'm a fan. Again, a little bit biased, but before and after, and I completely ignored all the advice that I give here. So this is my plea to you, my friends. Don't hesitate to experiment. And curiosity is a really, really good thing. We had a curious guest who was curious about dehaze working on a photo like this. I hadn't tried it. I hadn't edited the photo at all. But honestly, I love that edit, and I did nothing that I would normally do to a photo. I didn't do any masking. I didn't start with Develop Raw. I didn't do Super Contrast second. I didn't do really anything that I would normally do, and yet I feel like I have a beautiful result, right? Before and after. So Luminar Neo is very powerful. I think we've established that. I think you would agree if you're a user. If you're not a user, check it out. There's a summer sale going on right now. You can save quite a bit on Luminar Neo. There's a link down below. But very powerful tool, very flexible tool, and curiosity, experimentation, however you want to define that, incredibly important in learning things and finding new things that might work for you. So don't hesitate to blaze your own trail, my friends. As much as I love and enjoy you coming out here every week and checking out my videos and possibly following my advice, don't hesitate to do your own thing. Figure out what works for you, and you might come across an image like this one where you do something completely different than you would normally do and yet get a great result. Experimentation, curiosity, that's how we learn. It's fun, and you might get something that you love. Thanks for watching, my friends. I appreciate it. I'll be back soon with another video. You guys take care, and until next time, adios.